may inquire.
Ma'am, would you tell us your full name, please?
Aileen Moore,
Ms. Moore, how old are you?
29,
And can you tell us where you're living presently, the state?
Pennsylvania.
And who do you live with?
My sister.
Was there a time that you lived in the state of Florida, in the Daytona Beach areas?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you if you know an Aileen Carol Wuornos, also known to you as Lee.
Yes, I do.
Did you know that individual under any other names?
Yes, I did.
Is the name Blahovic one of the names you knew her as?
Yes.
You know her as under the name Grody.
Yes.
Did you ever know her to use the name Cammie Marsh Green?
Yes.
How is it that you knew this woman that you described as Aileen Carol Wuornos with the aliases that you told us about?
Objection to aliases.
Objection overruled. Ask the question if you can.
How is it that you came to know her?
I met her in a bar.
And did there come a point in time in your life that you and she formed a relationship?
Yes, we did.
How long did that relationship last?
About 4.5 years.
And could you describe the relationship to us in regards to your living arrangements, your working arrangements, things of that nature?
Well, we lived as lovers. And I worked quite a bit, and she worked as a prostitute.
During the time that you were living with the defendant, the type of employment that you primarily engaged in was what?
Hotel work.
Did you ever engage in prostitution?
No.
Objection overruled. Go ahead.
You earned a salary,
Yes.
went to work on a daily basis when you could find employment,
Yes.
got a paycheck,
Yes.
used that to support yourself and Ms. Wuornos,
Yes.
and shared in the household bills.
Yes, I did.
Leading, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
What did you do with the money that you made from working at the hotel?
I helped pay bills.
And did, during that period of time, you and Ms. Wuornos live in one location throughout your relationship?
Objection, leading, Your Honor.
Answer the question overruled.
You can tell us.
Can you repeat, please?
During the 4 years that you lived together, were you always in one place or did you move about?
And we moved around a lot.
I'd like to take you back to December the 1st of 1989. Do you recall where you were living at that time?
At the Ocean Shores Motel in Ormond Beach.
And how long had you been at the Ocean Shores Motel on that occasion?
Approximately a month.
And did there come a time that you left the Ocean Shore Motel and moved to another location?
Yes, there did.
And can you tell us about when that occurred?
The 1st of December.
The same day that we're talking about.
Right.
Now, during that period of time, you see Aileen Wuornos on December the 1st, 1989?
Yes, I did.
And were you two living together at that time?
Yes, we were.
Where were you when you first saw her? And can you describe to us, were you both at home at the same time, or did you come home from work, or were you going to work, or was she coming back from the location? Explain that to us.
I was in bed. It was early in the morning when she came in, and I was still sleeping.
Did you have a job at that time?
Yes, I did.
And what time did you have to go to work?
I believe it was 9 o'clock.
And did you go to work on that date, if you recall?
Yes, I did.
Well, before you went to work, did you have occasion to wake up? Obviously.
Yes, Lee came in.
Okay. Can you describe to us what, if anything, occurred, or what, if anything, you spoke about when she came in?
Well, she came in and she had a car outside and said that we were going to move. And we moved that day
Where did you move?
to Burley Avenue in Holly Hill.
Now, when you moved, can you describe, if you would, what type of vehicle it was that you moved with? And first of all, was it your car?
No.
Did you ever see that car before that day?
No, hadn't.
Did you ever see that car after that day?
A photograph of it.
But physically, in Ms. Wuornos' possession or your own?
No, I never saw it after that day.
Clerk, would you mark this? Now, before you moved, did you have to get ready to move? I mean, were you expecting to move on that day?
Not on that particular day, no.
Okay, were your bags packed and ready to go?
There was some things packed because we had planned on moving.
And can you describe to us what, if anything, occurred during the process of your moving?
We took all of our possessions and put them in the car and moved them over to Burley Avenue.
Did the defendant, Ms. Wuornos, tell you at that time where she had been during the
No.
morning hours before you woke up?
No,
Did she tell you about anything that had happened?
no,
Did she say anything to her, to you about anything odd happening or anything horrible happening? to you?
Objection, asked and answered and leading, Your Honor.
Answer the question if you can, ma'am.
no.
And was the move pretty much a routine move from the Ocean Shore Motel to the Burley Avenue address?
Yes,
During that time, can you tell us how you got there? Did you use this particular vehicle we're talking about?
yes, we
Objection,
did.
leading, Your Honor.
And who
Go
drove?
ahead and answer the question.
Who drove the car?
Lee did.
And can you describe how she was driving?
Just regularly driving.
Nothing abnormal about it?
No,
Objection, leading, Your Honor.
Can you describe, if you will, please, describe Aileen Wuornos as you observed her after you woke up, before you moved to the Burley Avenue from the Ocean Shore Motel? As best you can, what do you recall that morning to be like, in your own words?
very busy getting stuff out of the motel room, moving it into the car. She seemed fine. She was able to help. You know, she helped me pack the rest of the stuff, and we both packed the car.
Did she seem to you as if she had been drinking?
Yeah, I knew she had been drinking. I could smell it on her.
Did that, the fact that you could smell alcohol on her seem to be affecting her behavior?
Not really.
When you spoke to each other, did she seem to answer you back in a coherent fashion? Do you understand her speech patterns?
Leading
Yeah.
and compound, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
Was there anything about her actions that morning that you could tell this jury about that was out of the ordinary for the relationship that you and she had at that time of your life?
Not that I recall.
And then did you accomplish that move that morning and go to the Burley Avenue?
Yes.
address? What, if anything, did you do after you got to the Burley Avenue address? Did you unpack your bags?
No, because I had to go to work.
Okay. And did Ms. Wuornos say anything about the car, how she had gotten it at that point, or what she needed to do with it?
No.
How did you get to work?
I rode our moped that we had.
Okay. And who had the car?
Lee did.
Did you see what Lee did with the car? In other words, was the car still at the Burley Avenue address when you left, or had she already driven over?
Well, she had to take me back up to the Ocean Shore Motel to get the moped because it was still up there.
And did she drive you back from the Burley Avenue to the Ocean Shore?
Yes.
And during that period of time, did you have any difficulty driving?
No.
Did she tell you anything out of the ordinary about how the last couple of days of your life had been, or the night before?
Objection, leading, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Did you say anything about what had been going on, say, within the last 24 hours of her life?
No.
Now, did there come a point then that you took the moped and you went off to work?
Yes, I did.
And how late did you stay at work that day, if you recall?
I believe I was working 9 to 5 at that time.
And after you got off work, where did you go?
To the Burley Avenue house.
At that time, did you see that same automobile again that you had used to move?
No.
Did you ever physically see it again after you went off, as Lee took you to the hotel to pick up the moped?
No.
When you got home, was there anyone present at the apartment? Was it a home or an apartment?
It was a garage converted into an apartment, so I guess it was...
Was anyone there when you got there?
I don't remember. I don't believe so.
Did there come a point in time that evening when you saw Lee Wuornos again?
Yes.
Can you describe how that came about?
I don't remember, I really don't remember if she was home when I got home from work or if she came in later.
Anything occur when she came home? Out of the ordinary?
When later that evening, I know we were sitting watching TV, and she told me she had something to tell me.
Hey, can you describe how she was acting when she, before you tell us what she told you? Where was she and where were you, if you remember? What were you all doing? Just watching TV?
We were sitting on the floor watching TV.
Okay. Were there anything unusual going on at that time, other than just sitting there in an apartment together watching some TV?
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Can you describe her appearance at that time?
She seemed fine.
Is there anything particularly different or the same about her as when you had left her to go to work?
She was the same,
Same basic physical appearance?
yes.
She told you that there was something that she wanted to tell you.
Correct.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that conversation began and what transpired?
We were sitting on the floor watching TV, and she just come out and said, "I have something to tell you." And I asked her what, and she said that she had shot and killed a man that day.
Did you say anything to her when she told you that?
And I didn't want to believe it. I was probably in awe.
Did you say anything to her, like, I don't believe you, or what, I don't want to use vulgarity, you're shitting me? I mean, what's going on here?
I'm
What
sure
are you
I
saying?
probably replied something.
Just ask questions.
All right. Did you ask her anything about what she had just told you, that she had shot a man?
I don't believe I asked her any questions about it. I might have replied something like, "I don't believe you," or something along that line.
Did she say anything else at that point?
Later she was telling me that she had put the body in the woods under a piece of rug, and that she had dropped the car off up in Ormond Beach around John Anderson Drive.
Did she tell you that the man she had shot, she had taken his car, and that was the car you used to move with?
Objection, Your Honor. Leave.
Overruled.
Did she tell you anything about the car in relationship to the man she had shot?
I believe she did at one point.
Was it your understanding, based upon what she was telling you, that it had been the man that had gotten shot, whose car you guys had been in that day?
Yes, it was.
Did she tell you anything about why she shot the man?
No.
Now, during that evening, as this conversation was going on, did you continue to watch TV?
Yes, I believe so.
Did the defendant continue to watch TV after she told you she just shot a man and had taken his car? You had been in it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I'm trying to understand what is happening in that apartment, in that garage, as you're being told by this defendant that she shot a man. Can you just describe that in your own words?
We were just sitting around watching TV, drinking a few beers. It was
That's
a
when she told you?
typical evening.
Now, when you packed up to move to the Burley Avenue, did you pretty much know what kind of articles you each owned? You've been living together for how long at that point?
At that point, it was approximately 3.5 years.
And did Ms. Wuornos have any articles at that time, that evening, that were not something that you had seen before?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury how you noticed that, you made that observation?
Well, I knew that they didn't belong to us.
Okay, can you describe what you saw?
There's only a few things that I can really remember from the particular occurrence, because she'd given me a jacket and a scarf. And
Well, let's talk specifically about what you remember. Don't speculate. Try as best you can. What do you remember seeing, and what do you remember about that evening?
I remember a box with a bunch of papers in it.
Did you look at the papers at all, or see anything, or notice anything about them?
I wasn't really paying attention. She was going through them, and she tried to show me a piece of paper and a picture of somebody, and I didn't want to look at it.
Did she tell you that the picture was the man she had shot?
And I believe she did.
Were you able to see any type of name or any documentation or personal identification?
I remember seeing the name Richard on a piece of paper that she was going through.
Now, when she was going through these items, can you describe her demeanor? How was she acting?
Normal, going through stuff, throwing things away and keeping things.
Kind of sifting through these articles, throwing some that she wanted, some she didn't want?
Right.
Did you see anything else other than just the paperwork she was going through?
I remember a suitcase and a jacket, and there was a big blanket, a comforter. It was brown and tan.
Can you describe whether it was a man or a woman's jacket?
It was, I believe it was a man's jacket. It was a members only brand.
Now, as she's sifting through these materials, she offers to show you a photograph of the man she told you she shot.
Right.
At that time, did she tell you anything else about what occurred between she and that man?
No.
Did she ever suggest in any way, or could you, by looking at it, could you observe whether or not she had been injured?
No, I saw no sign of injury.
In the morning when you left for work, when you first saw her, or in that evening?
No.
Was there anything abnormal about her? Interactions?
No.
You know what she did with the picture of the man she said she had shot?
I believe that was part of the things that she threw away.
Ma'am, let me show you what has been marked for identification purposes, as states 00 for identification.
Counsel, you reviewed this item.
Your Honor, that item has been previously provided and discovered to counsel in form of photographic copies.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That'd be rough mark for identification.
Your Honor, for the record, it is states 00 for identification. Ma'am, I realize that you can't see a serial number or a tag or anything on that car, but can you describe to the jury whether or not the vehicle exhibited states 00 for identification when it is that you last saw a car looking like that was in possession of Aileen Wuornos?
It was the car that we used to move with on December 1st.
Now, can you describe anything that you recall about the car as you saw it in the possession of Aileen Wuornos?
I remember a tag that was on the front of it. It was a gator tag. It said the Gators across it. And I knew it had tinted windows. I remembered that. I don't remember any other specific things about it.
Did there come a point in time when, strike that, Your Honor, force permission. Ms. Moore, how long did you remain living with the defendant after she told you she had shot this man on December the 1st, 1989?
Approximately a year.
At any time during the period of that relationship, as lovers, as roommates, as friends, did she ever advise you that the man she had shot had done anything to her?
No, she didn't.
Did she ever suggest that she had been raped by this man?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
Did she ever say anything?
No.
Did she ever give you an explanation as to why she had shot the man?
No.
Did you, during that period of time, talk about many things with her?
Yes, we talked quite a bit.
Was this a relationship, a close relationship between you?
I believe it was.
And she never, ever suggested that the man she told you she shot December the 1st and used his car to move to the Burley Avenue had done anything to her on the morning of December the 1st, 1989, did she?
Objection asked and answered and comment.
Overruled.
You can answer that, ma'am. Did she?
No.
back on December the 1st, 1989. Did you know what type of profession Ms. Wuornos was using to earn a living?
Yes, I did.
And during the period of time when you first met her and you began living together, did she have any other occupations as a mainstay of the way she earned a living?
No.
During that period of time, from the time that she told you that she shot the man on December the 1st, 1989, back to when you first met her, did she ever indicate to you that she had been beaten and raped and robbed by people that she was going out and prostituting herself to while you two lived together?
No.
Do you know if on December the 1st, 1989, Aileen Carol Wuornos owned a firearm?
Yes.
Had you ever seen her with a gun?
Yes.
Did she tell you why she'd gotten the gun?
She said it was for her protection because she hitchhiked.
Did she say what she would do with that gun if anyone messed with her?
I don't remember.
Do you see the defendant, Aileen Carol Wuornos, in this courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you point her out for the record, please?
Stipulated, Your Honor.
Please, the court, I'd like the witness to identify.
May proceed.
Ma'am, can you please point her out if you can, please?
She's sitting right there.
Can you describe what she's wearing?
Stipulated at the end of the council table, Your Honor.
Satisfactory to the court.
May the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Aileen Carol Wuornos.
Stipulated again, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
May I inquire, counsel?
Thank you. Wuornos since June of 1986, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And from June of 1986 to December of 1990, you shared a home with her.
Correct.
And because of that, you observed Lee on a daily basis.
Yes.
You got to know her.
Yes.
You knew her probably better than anyone else.
I believe so.
And you've already testified you knew she was a prostitute.
Correct.
And you knew that within a month of living with her, right?
Correct.
And you knew that she was a prostitute, as Mr. Moore pointed out, throughout the entire time that you were living.
Correct.
And you knew that at least 3 times a week she was prostituted.
At least, yeah, I'd say.
Now, you've talked about the fact that you shared in some of the expenses of the home and things like that, that you worked from time to time. In fact, during that 4.5 years, approximately half that time you were unemployed. Isn't that true?
I really don't know.
Well, there were numerous times when you were unemployed.
I wouldn't say numerous. There was a couple months at a time I would go without jobs.
And when you went those couple of months at a time without jobs, Lee supported you, didn't she?
Yes.
And she contributed to the household when you were working.
Yes.
Lee rarely told you much about work. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
And that was in part because you told her you didn't want to hear it. Isn't that true?
Yes.
You didn't want to hear it because you were jealous of her work. Isn't that true?
I didn't want her to do it.
You didn't want to share her with other men. Isn't that true?
That's true.
And from what Lee did tell you, life on the road in her job was in fact dangerous. She told you that, didn't she?
Yes.
And she did tell you that she'd been raped and beaten, didn't she?
It was before I met her that she had been raped and beaten, but
She did tell you that she'd been raped and beaten.
yes.
And she said that that had happened on more than one occasion.
Correct.
In fact, she said one time she was beaten so severely that she couldn't even recognize her face.
Objection, Judge, if we can establish when this occurred, and hearsay.
Lay for the predicate, sir. The objection will be sustained until the predicate later.
While you were living with her, you recall her telling you of an occasion where she had been beaten very severely.
Objection, Your Honor. If we can establish when this supposedly happened, and also it's hearsay.
Lay
Shall
for the
serve.
predicate.
Let me ask you this. She did tell you that nearly every single day that she was prostituting, somebody was rough or abusive with her, didn't she?
No.
She told you that people were abusive and mean to her in her work. Nearly every
Verbally.
day, at least one person.
Verbally.
Verbally abusive.
Verbally abused.
Ms. Moore, you also know that Lee drank a lot, don't you?
Yes.
And that she drank most nights. Right? And while you didn't drink as much as she did, you drank beer just about nightly, right?
Whenever she would have it, yes, I'd probably drink a few.
Okay. And you can hold your beer pretty well, can't you?
Sometimes.
But Lee, when she drank a whole lot, she would get kind of moody sometimes.
Yes.
And you could tell when she was drinking a lot, couldn't you?
Yes.
Because you knew her real well.
Right.
And sometimes Lee drank as much as even a case in a night, didn't she?
Yes.
And on a couple of occasions, she would go on a binge where she would drink that much for more than one day
Correct.
with just a couple hours of sleep.
Right.
But during these times, Lee Wuornos never struck you.
No.
She never got physically abusive with you.
No.
You argued with her, of course,
Yes.
as any roommates would.
Right.
Overall, Lee Wuornos was very protective of you, wasn't she?
Yes.
She loved you, didn't she?
Yes.
She said she'd do anything for you, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And she said this to you on numerous occasions.
Correct.
Didn't she? She even said she'd die for you, didn't she, Tom?
Yes.
And she said that over and over again, didn't she?
I'm sure she said it more than once.
She, in fact, said it many times.
Objection, Your Honor, self-serving hearsay. I think the jury got the point that they had a loving relationship.
Objection to the statement, Your Honor.
Go ahead and ask questions, and if you want me to sort these answers out or ignore them, I mean the objections
No, sir.
I'm getting. Go ahead.
It was, in fact, much more than a couple of times, wasn't it?
It could have been.
Do you recall giving the deposition this morning?
Yes, I did.
Page, please, counsel.
Page 159 and 160.
What day? We have a date.
You said 159 and 160.
What day?
Oh, I'm going to get to that.
Talking about what was the deposition?
I understand. The deposition was given on November 22nd, 1991 at 1:15 p.m. You recall that deposition, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall that Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Knowles were present at that
Yes, I
time?
do.
And do you recall that Mr. Moore was there as well?
Yes.
And do you recall being asked the question, and I'm talking about line 4, Counselor, and you recall also that she said she would die for you, and your answer was she said
Objection, Your
that.
Honor. Please, the court, first of all, it's improper, if it's attempting to impeach, it's improper. Witnesses answered the question. You don't read a deposition into the record.
If you were asked a question, you should give an answer if I ask an answer to the law.
You recall the deposition.
Yes, I do.
You were placed under oath.
Yes, I was.
You swore to tell the truth,
Yes,
just as you did here in court today.
correct.
You were asked the question, and you recall also that she said, referring to Aileen,
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection is overruled if he's reading a question. It appears to the court that that's what he's doing.
that is what I'm doing. And you recall also that she said, referring to Aileen, that she would die for you. You remember being asked that question?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember your answer?
I'm sure I answered it that she had told me that before.
You know, your answer was,
Objection, Your Honor.
Just read the answer.
the answer, she said that throughout our whole relationship. She said that throughout our whole relationship too. So, You remember saying that?
No, I don't, but if it's there, I said it. And I'm sure she said it more than once.
She said that throughout your whole relationship, didn't she?
Okay,
4.5 years.
okay,
Now, you left Lee Wuornos in December of 1990,
yes, I did.
and you've testified that you gained this information about, that she had said she had killed someone nearly a year before.
Correct,
Is that correct? And in December 1989, she came to you and she said, I've got to tell you something, right?
right,
And that something was that she had shot and killed a man.
correct,
She also told you what she'd done with his car,
correct,
a car that you saw when she brought it to the motel.
right.
It was a Cadillac,
Yes, it was,
which she told you later she left in Norman Beach.
right.
Now, Lee was intoxicated when she told you these things, wasn't she?
Yes,
And she was intoxicated the morning you first saw the Cadillac too, wasn't she?
yes, she was.
But when she wanted to tell you something, and that something was that she had killed someone, your response was you didn't want to hear about it. Isn't that true?
That could have been what I said.
That is what you said, isn't it, Ms. Moore?
It could be. I don't remember my exact response, but I know I didn't like to hear about even her working, so I'm sure I didn't want to hear about something like that.
And nearly a year later, you decided to leave.
Correct.
And when you did decide to leave, it was in November of 1990, isn't that correct?
I believe I left in the beginning of December.
Beginning of December, late November. And that was after you had seen a composite drawing on the television. Is that true?
Yes,
And that was after you had seen a composite drawing, which you assumed was you,
correct.
and you thought you were a suspect, didn't you?
I really don't know what I thought at that time. I know I was scared
You were scared you might be arrested, weren't you?
because I knew I was driving the car when it happened, when I wrecked it.
And so you left.
Right.
You went up to Pennsylvania.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. You went to Ohio.
Yes, I did.
You later went to Pennsylvania.
Correct.
While you were in Pennsylvania, law enforcement people contacted you, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And you were taken to a motel where you spent the night with an officer.
Correct.
And the next day, you heard from some more officers.
Correct.
Bruce Munster was one of those officers.
Yes, he was.
Jerry Thompson was one of those officers.
Yes, he was.
And when you got to Volusia County, you met Mr. Horsegli
Correct.
and 4 other female officers.
Correct.
And you were put in the Daytona motel. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You didn't pay for that motel, did you?
No.
And you were fed while you were there, weren't you?
Yes.
You didn't pay for your food, did you?
No.
You were allowed to get cigarettes, beer, right?
Correct.
You didn't pay for those either.
I believe I did buy those.
Okay. The other items, your food, your motel room, things like that, those were paid for by the law enforcement officers, weren't they?
I really don't know who paid for it.
But you know you did.
I know I didn't, correct.
And you were in that room for several days.
Correct.
And while you were in that room, the law enforcement officers wanted you to contact Lee, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
They wanted you to write her a letter
Correct.
so that she would call you.
Correct.
And they asked you to write a note and kind of told you the kind of things to put in it, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Let's go. Judge Louise.
Answer it if you can.
I really don't remember if they told me what to write or if they just gave me the basic information on tell her to call you and give her the number. But they didn't sit down and
Oh, no,
say
they
write
didn't write
these
it.
exact words.
Right, you wrote the note.
Right.
But they wanted you to give her a number to call you.
Correct.
let her know where you were.
Right.
And you did that.
Yes, I did.
And you waited for her to call.
Yes, I did.
And of course, she did call, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She loved you,
Yes, she did.
and you knew it.
Yeah.
And when she did call, the officers that were in the room, they were recording those phone calls, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Of course, they were doing that with your permission.
Correct.
You had signed a little statement saying they had permission to do that.
Correct.
They wanted you to ask me certain questions, didn't they?
I don't recall them have
Well,
specific questions,
okay, but
no.
they gave you ideas of what, they led you in directions while you were having these conversations, didn't they?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall them occasionally passing you little notes suggesting that you work on her in this way, or when she's crying, you should hit her harder than, those kind of things?
I remember a few notes being passed, yes.
Do you recall a note being passed where when she started crying, that was a good time to get her to talk about it?
I really don't remember that, no. I remember it might have been said to me. I don't remember it being written down, but it could have been.
Okay. Oh, it might have been said to you. Was it in fact said to you, Ms. Moore?
Yeah, I remember hearing it.
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's gratuitous comments after a question.
It's all right.
And the things that they were doing, the hints that they were giving you as to how to talk to Lee, those were so that they could get Lee to say what they wanted her to, right?
I really don't know.
Well, you wanted Lee to say certain things.
I definitely wanted Lee to say certain things. Yes, I did.
You wanted Lee to make statements.
Yes, I did.
You wanted her to clear you, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And in order for her to say what you wanted her to, you lied to her, right?
Yes,
You lied to her about why you came to Florida.
right.
You lied to her about who you came with.
Yes,
You lied to her about who was paying for the room.
right.
And more importantly, you lied to her about whether or not anybody was in the room with you.
Yes, I did.
And whether anybody was taping the conversations.
Correct.
Of course, the reason you did these things was to clear yourself.
Yes, it was.
And that's why on 2 different occasions, you even suggested that you might kill yourself to leave.
I don't understand your question. Can you?
Well, you recall on 2 different occasions during these phone conversations suggesting that you might be suicidal over this whole thing?
I remember once saying that, why don't I just go kill myself?
And the reason you did that was to get Lee to say the things you wanted him to, correct?
I really don't know why I said it.
You did want her to make statements to clear you.
Yes, I
Right.
did.
And throughout all the conversations that she had with you, she continues to tell you how much she loves you, right?
Yes, she did.
And that she'd do anything for you, right?
Yes.
That she would even die for you.
Yes.
And she would surely want to do anything to keep you from killing yourself.
Oh, I don't know that.
Now, there were several times during the conversation when Lee said that she would take a fall for you, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object. First of all, counsel that asking self-serving statements of this individual being offered for that purpose.
Your Honor, I would object to the speaking objection.
Objection, Judge. Here's
Objection is noted, and I want to hear what he has to say, and then I'll sustain your objection. Are you making an
Yes, sir.
objection? Sustain.
You were worried during these phone conversations that Lee might not clear you, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was very scared.
But clearing you to you meant more than just Lee saying you didn't have anything to do with the homicide, right?
Yeah, I believe that I needed her to say more.
You wanted her to say that you didn't do it and that she did all of it by herself.
That could basically be what I wanted, yes.
So her saying that you were totally innocent, that you didn't have anything to do with any of this, that wasn't enough.
No.
Eventually, Lee indicated that she was prepared to make a statement, right?
Yes.
And after 11 calls over 3 days, you got what you wanted.
Objection, Your Honor. There's no predicate.
Sustain the objection.
There were, in fact, you were in that hotel room for several days, were you not?
Yes, I was.
And there were at least 10 phone calls made, right?
No, there was quite a few.
And it was only at the end of those calls, on the last one, in which you got what you wanted. Isn't that true?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you had conversations and meetings with law enforcement officers after November of 1991, didn't you?
After November of 1991.
Let me help you. Sometime after you got back up north, about a month after you left.
Judge, I'm going to object to counsel's gratuity of helping a witness. Also, Judge,
Just rephrase your question.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just rephrase your question.
When you got back up north about a month later, you heard from Mr. Munster, didn't you?
Correct.
And at one point, Mr. Munster actually helped
Objection,
you
Your
get
Honor,
it.
outside the scope of direct, or so far.
Sustain the objection.
Your Honor, with all due respect, I think it goes to bias and interest of this witness.
His objection was beyond the scope of direct, and I sustained the objection.
Yes, sir. May we approach the bench, or at least make an argument outside the presence of the jury?
Your step to the jury room a moment.
The jury's out of court, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'd like to have Ms. Moore here for the argument.
I don't care if you're here. You have some objection, state it.
Your Honor, simply put, bias and interest is always an area subject to
Or
prosecution.
if you want to remove,
If we could.
Mr. Baird, you escort the witness out of the building.
Your Honor, this specific line of questioning has to do with the bias or the interest of the witness. It relates to, one, a movie deal situation that's been involved in this case, and everything relates to her.
You know, you're telling me something I hadn't heard before, because I had the benefit of not reading all these newspaper accounts and not viewing the television. And I don't know anything about a movie contract, and I hadn't heard it from this witness.
That's why Mr. Miller was
I was leading into that, and I think that that's an area which can be explored to expose the bias and interest that this witness might have for doing saying the things she did.
Judge, what counsel wants to do is go outside the scope of direct. He wants to try to bring in hearsay statements of what somebody told her, which would be objectionable anyway, what she did subsequently. Counsel wants to ask those questions. He can put them on, do this witness, and in the case of cheat, he can establish the relevancy of it. Not through the statements, it might have a limited scope. It was to that date, December 1st, 1989. What she did 2 years later is not viable under the scope.
Bias and prejudice, I agree with, and I also agree with the statement made by counsel.
Well, if I
I
may respond to
understand
that.
the objection is beyond the scope of direct examination at this time. You have the freedom to call this witness.
Well, Your Honor, if I just may respond to that for the record.
Certainly, I want you to protect your record in every
I
respect.
understand that, Your Honor. But what I'm
In fact, you've
suggesting is...
protected the record more than we've tried a lawsuit.
Yes, sir. What I'm
It's time
suggesting,
we start trying a lawsuit. Now, go ahead and make your suggestions.
Your Honor, whenever bias and interest,
I've already ruled on that, I don't need any more.
whenever they are relevant, it can never be beyond the scope.
Haven't I ruled? You want me to, Madam Court Reporter, will you read what I said?
It's time we start trying a lawsuit here. Now
Before
go ahead
that,
and-
where I sustained the objection. At least that's my best recollection of what I said.
I sustain the objection. It's beyond the scope of direct examination.
All right, anything further now for the record, or can we get on with the lawsuit?
One quick thing, Your Honor, just so that we understand that Mr. Miller doesn't tread on a path that would violate Your Honor's order. The area relating to bias and interest pertaining to matters that happened subsequently to the time period that Mr. DeMoore spoke about, is Is Your Honor not allowing us to get into
We're
that?
talking about the direct examination that I heard from the witness this morning was in the courtroom. And that's what I'm talking about. If you want to go beyond that, feel free to call any of the witness of your own.
And those matters, even if they relate to bias or interest?
I have sustained that objection. I believe it's what I said, was it not? You want to work for it again?
No.
I need to make sure we all understand what was said.
Okay, Your Honor. We would respectfully object on confrontation clause
That has
grounds.
well been noted that you've objected.
Thank you.
Bring the witness back and then read.
Thank you, Your Honor. On the way down to Daytona from up north, and I'm talking about before you came down to the motel that we talked about, you prepared a list of the places you lived with Ms. Wuornos over the 4.5 years that you were with her, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you also indicated on that list whether or not you were employed.
Correct.
And when you were in the motel room, you were in that room, one of the people that was in that room with you, one of the officers, was Rosemary Giansanti, is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Giansanti, in fact, escorted you into the courtroom today, didn't she?
I believe she was behind me. I believe one of the officers escorted me in.
Okay, but she was behind you and came in and sat down for a moment, isn't that true?
Yes.
And you've had many discussions with Rose Giansanti, haven't you?
Yes.
And you discussed testifying here today, Mr. Giansanti, haven't you?
No, I don't believe so. I just got in here.
I mean, on prior occasions.
About me coming down here?
Yes.
Yes, she knew I was coming down.
And you talked to her about the kind of things that you were going to have to testify to, didn't you?
I really don't remember.
Your Honor, in light of the court's ruling, I have no further questions to this witness.
May you redirect? Yes, sir. Please report. Ms. Moore, counsel for the defendant asked you about a composite that you had seen as one of the reasons why you left the defendant.
Correct?
Now, that composite was a composite of two women that had been seen in an automobile, totally unrelated to the Cadillac. Isn't that true?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were describing the automobile that you said wrecked, what car were you describing?
Objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, that door is wide open.
I know it's wide open, but I'm having concern that at this time further hearings are held.
Your Honor, please, the court, defense counsel has opened this door.
Your Honor, I object to the speaking objection.
Right.
Mr. DeMore, I can speak at other times.
You know, this is not an easy legal issue. Maybe we have a moment or two outside the jury's
I
presence.
think we do need to have the jury go out. If the jury What I'm concerned about now is I think we've reached a stage where we're on some very thin ice in regard to the Williamsville matter, and I think we ought to hear it out right now. Because even though doors have been opened, I have been very particular. Testimony should be allowed until a ruling is made so you know which way we're coming from.
Judge,
Yes.
my point, Judge, is counsel specifically asked questions to elicit the testimony regarding a composite and wrecking of another car. That defense counsel brought that out on his cross-examination
I
and
know I
answered the
heard that,
response.
but that's what I'm saying. I think we need to resolve the Williamsville problem right now before we proceed further. Because you see, you people have had the benefit of discovery, I have not. But I think we're skirting into Williamsville because I believe it's going to be somebody else's car.
Judge, at a minimum, I would like to at least, now counsel was very quick to let it be left in the jury's mind that maybe this witness had wrecked Mr. Mallory's car. He didn't bother to clear that up.
Why don't
We certainly
we
have a
get it
right to
all
clear that up.
resolved right now, Mr. Moore, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yes, sir. Understood.
No problem with getting it all resolved right now, Your Honor,
All
but,
right, how long do you think it's going to take?
well, Your Honor,
We've already heard a number of, we had a hearing on the 3rd and the 10th, and is there going to be more than you want on the record? Are you satisfied with the record that you have
We
received?
surely are not satisfied with the record at this point, Your Honor.
I was afraid of that. Bring the jury out, we're going to discharge them for 30 minutes, and then we'll bring them back in, and I assure you we'll be ready to proceed in 30 minutes, counsel. You had a day that in the record before, and if I have to keep going for rehearing after rehearing after rehearing, I would be prepared to rule it at a time.
With all due respect, it's not a matter of rehearing, Your Honor, it's a matter of the specific proffer the state needs to make in honor for the opportunity to consult.
Right, and that's what I want now.
Your Honor, with the court's
Yes, sir,
permission.
before the jury comes in.
Yes, Judge, two matters before the court. One is, as I understand it, Dr. Bordini would like to see Ms. Wuornos this weekend. He's indicated Saturday and Sunday. The doctor was requested by the state in order to assist the state in this case. Your Honor previously ruled, when the state originally requested an expert in this case, that Dr. Bernard was appointed as a court witness. My understanding of Your Honor's ruling, and Your Honor will correct me if I'm wrong, with regard to Dr. Bordini, was that his role was to assess the testing that was provided and assist the state. I did not understand Your Honor's ruling to be that the state was getting another expert in this case.
I cannot restrict the request for a witness. If the witness desires to examine, I must abide by that wish.
But my understanding was that his role was to assist the state, not in the role of a witness.
And that's the way he has to do it, that's the way he'll do it.
If his role then is that of a witness, then we would request, because there's some additional matters that can come up with regard to jail records and so on, that Ms. Wuornos have an expert appointed from Volusia County. She does not have such an expert.
We've done it, but now we're not delaying the trial.
Won't delay the trial, but just that we need somebody to
You
assist
want
us.
Dr. Crock?
We'd like Dr. Crock.
That's a shock and a surprise.
Judge, as the court noted previously, there are already two psychologists appointed to the defense. We would recommend to the court Dr. Umesh Matra, a well-qualified psychiatrist, a medical doctor that might be able to assist the defense psychologist opposed to just another run-of-the-mill psychologist.
Well, Your Honor,
I don't mean to suggest that the state is what the defense needs, but I don't think that Dr. Crock, a third psychologist, I'm leaving it up to you, whatever you want to get.
Judge, let me just say this.
But we're not stopping the trial.
We don't want to stop the trial, but under the rule, we are entitled to an expert from Volusia County.
You are exactly correct, and that will be granted, fair deal.
And we would request Dr. Crock.
So he can come around at nights or whenever it is, and I'm not stopping the trial for him to proceed at this late date.
Again, Your Honor, we're not stopping the trial.
Right. Does he use Gainsford or does he use Orange Park as a rationale?
Either one, Your Honor. We'll figure it
Wherever you
out.
want it, but we'll be prepared to proceed,
Your Honor is granting the motion,
of course.
and I'll get you in order.
Yes,
Judge,
please.
yeah, Judge, respectfully object to the appointment of Dr. Bordini.
That's fine. As noted, I wouldn't be all surprised if, I didn't think you'd let it get through without objection, and I made the order last week, I just haven't signed it yet.
The second thing, Your Honor, relates to a proffer that we would like to make. As Your Honor heard earlier, there was an effort by Mr. Miller to ask certain questions pertaining to bias and interest on the part of the witness. There was an objection by the state as it being beyond the scope. The defense argued that bias and interest is always within the scope of cross-examination under the Confrontation Clause. Your Honor sustained the objection. And we'd like to...
Now, I think that we resolved the reason that I did that was because we were getting close to some other law matters that I told you we were not going into until we had the proffer and proffer had been made yet. You all resolved that matter, right?
We resolved the other matter, the Williamsburg-related matter, for now.
Now, how far do you want to go in this? You make a proffer now, and I'll make a determination.
This is a proffer with regard to bias and witness as regard to this witness, independent of the other issue. This proffer deals with the fact that this witness was approached concerning movie deals regarding Ms. Wuornos. This witness was informed of that by law enforcement officers involved in this case. That this witness agreed to be engaged with that at one point. That the name of an attorney was given to her. That she called Agent Jansanti and asked the agent about this attorney, an independent attorney, not with the state attorney's office, relating to this movie issue. And it goes to the witness's state of mind, as the witness is testifying here. There's a lot I could say on it, but that's...
What time frame are we talking about? Talking to a movie actor or somebody or author or something? What's the predicate time?
We're talking about January 1991 through...
That's subsequent to all this, is it?
Well, Your Honor, In earnestness and truthfully, as an officer of this court, I would respectfully and abundance of caution say that anything that they have that the court deems relevant to bias or prejudice, including movie deals up until the day the witness testifies, may
Right.
Maybe
I would be inclined to let it in now that we resolved that other thing. I was skating on some ice, and to be honest with you, I got a signal from council,
the other counsel.
the other council. But yes, we were there where I thought we were, and that's the reason I stopped the trial. Well, you.
They didn't know where we were.
We were, but you got it resolved.
Yes, sir.
I'm starting to lose where we are.
Just check with me, I'll let you know.
Right, so I think it's all right, and I believe that it will be, we will let you go into that now, but it was skirting into this other area where I was very concerned, and I wanted justice to be done correctly, and I think we're safe, and you can go into it now.
I think, yeah, I was gonna say, the other area, I think we've all figured out, and we'll deal with this area.
That's right.
Okay, and this would be in front of the jury?
Yes, sir. Is your spot right now?
Your Honor, we are. There's one other thing, so as we not lose an objection. Part of the reason there's been such an interest in a movie is because the defendant killed 7 men. If she'd only killed one...
Well, I've only heard about one.
Yes, sir.
That's all we're hearing about here.
I realize that.
So far.
But proper redirect after cross on the movie deal would get into why there's a movie deal. We're not going to do that because we're getting into the Williams rule matter, but we'd like to reserve those type of redirect questions for instance, why the composite was done, why it scared her with the composite done, for a later time and not consider to have waived it. We're staying away from it now because of Williams rule problems. Even though we believe it should be admissible, we don't want to push the issue at this point because we can reserve it.
That's fine.
Thank you.
I think that's fair. Is that right? All right with the defense?
That's okay.
To reserve it, obviously, we would be alert on that.
That's right.
Yeah,
We have an answer.
Actually, Judge, we would reserve the right to call this witness as well, and if you can tell her at the end to either leave us a number where she could be reached, or if that's unacceptable to Mr. Tanner,
through us.
we can have her reached through Mr. Tanner's office, and the defense can call her in our case.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Then bring on the jury and the witness.
We have a witness going before the jury.
Oh, yeah, come on, the witness first, I think. May Squire?
Thank you. Ms. Moore, we were talking sometime before about after you got back up north, after you had left the Daytona area, after you'd been in the motel. You recall that now?
Yes.
All right. And you recall about a month after getting up north, you heard from Investigator Bruce Munster.
Correct.
And it was in late January to mid-February when you first heard from Mr. Munster, wasn't it?
I believe it was the beginning, the earlier part of January.
The earlier part of January?
Yes.
Okay. And when he contacted you...
Judge, can we clear something up? Counsel's asked, and I don't mean to interrupt you, counsel. First time this witness was contacted, you asking as to when Mr. Munster first met her in his official capacity to investigate the case or in some other matter?
I'll clarify. All right. The first time that you spoke with Mr. Munster after you returned from Daytona, when you were in the motel, okay? That's when you spoke with him on the phone, and at that time he suggested getting you a lawyer, right?
Correct.
And that lawyer's name was Mr. Bradshaw.
Yes.
And that lawyer's purpose, he wanted you to talk to him
Objection,
about...
Your Honor, as to hearsay, as to what Mr. Munster told him?
Your Honor, if you may, it goes to the witness's state of mind, not necessarily.
Right. Got the proof of the charge. Go ahead. Based upon the conversation,
Yes.
what did you do?
Well, Your Honor, it's a
Go
court
ahead.
that is not hearsay.
Go ahead.
Okay. That in case someone came to you about booking movie deals,
Right.
right?
Right.
And Mr. Bradshaw was assisting Mr. Munster in his booking movie deals, right?
I know he was as an attorney that Mr. Munster had spoken with.
Right. And Mr. Munster was asking if you wanted to get in with him, right?
Asked me if I would like to use the same attorney. Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Munster is an investigator, is that correct?
Correct.
A law enforcement officer.
Right.
Now, ultimately, you ended up calling Rose Giansanti about that, didn't you?
I believe so.
All right. Ms. Giansanti, we spoke to her before. She is, in fact, an agent with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, is she not?
Yes, she is.
And she's one of those individuals that was in the motel room with you before.
Correct.
And Ms. Giansanti, you like to talk to her about things like that, right? I mean, she was somebody you trusted.
Correct.
And you called her and asked her opinion on the book and movie deals.
Correct.
And when you did that, you spoke with her about some monetary figures.
Something that, yeah, it was mentioned.
In fact, the figure mentioned was $50,000, correct?
That could have been, yes.
Now, you've already testified that you trusted Rose Giansanti and that you liked her, didn't you? Or you still do, right?
Yes, to consider her a good friend. She's been very helpful throughout this.
Okay. Y'all have had dinner together and things like that, right?
Yes.
And when you came to the deposition that we spoke of earlier in November of this year, she accompanied you to that as well, did she not?
Correct.
And that was at your request?
Correct.
And she had picked you up at the airport on that occasion?
Yes, she did.
And again, she was here with you today, was she not?
Yes.
May I have just a moment?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have no further questions.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Moore, let me take you back to a discussion that you were having with Mr. Miller some time ago about an automobile that was wrecked. Let me ask you, ma'am, if I can show you what has been marked as an exhibit states PP for identification. I ask you if you can recognize that automobile.
Yes, I can.
Is that the automobile you were referring to as the car that was wrecked when you and Ms. Wuornos were in it sometime in July of 1990?
Yes.
And ma'am, let me show you what you have previously identified as states 00 for identification. And also show you what has been entered in as evidence as states 13 in evidence. I ask you if you recognize the vehicle contained in those photographs.
Yes, I do.
Okay, with the exception of the gator tag not being on the vehicle in states 13 that you described as what you saw on December the 1st, 1989. I meant to say December 13th, 1989, if I excuse me, December the 1st, 1989, excuse me. Is there anything about those cars that in any way resembles what is the car in states PP for identification?
No.
Talking about two different automobiles, aren't we?
Correct.
And this is the car you were referring to that you had been driving in the company of Ms. Wuornos when it was wrecked.
Correct.
And that was sometime in July of 1990, wasn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
And in fact, even after that wreck, some composites came out that scared you, that were generated from the wreck that you and Ms. Wuornos had in the car.
Objection, Your Honor.
States PP.
Objection overruled.
Isn't that true?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that was one of the reasons, in addition to others possibly, that
Objection
you
to that
left
is possible.
the defendant.
Objection overruled.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
And isn't it a fact those composites came out months after the car wreck?
Objection asked and answered leading, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
Yes.
It'd be fair to say at least about a year after Mr. Mallory had been murdered.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Correct.
Now, during the time that the defendant and you were living together, did she ever come back to the apartment and discuss with you that she had been physically abused by any of her customers as she was prostituting herself?
No.
But she did discuss with you verbal abuse by them.
Yes.
And that was constant. She talked about that.
Correct.
She was getting sick and tired of the verbal abuse she was getting out on the highways from people who weren't accepting her proposition. Isn't that
Leading, Your
true?
Honor.
Rephrase your question.
Did she tell you why she was getting sick and tired of the verbal abuse? What was
Leading, Your
happening to
Honor.
her?
Objection overruled.
I really don't understand your question.
In the context of the 4.5 years you described, you and this defendant lived together. You told us that she never once came in and told you that she had been physically abused by any of the customers or people that she had dealt with. Isn't that true?
Yes,
And during that 4.5 year period, you saw nothing from a physical basis of viewing her, with the exception of one time, I believe, when she got hit by a car on the highway on her elbow. That
Objection, Your
indicated
Honor.
she had been ever hurt by anyone. Isn't that true?
yes,
And you would have observed if she had been physically beaten up by someone. Once you saw each other whenever she was home,
Objection,
constantly.
Your Honor. Leading, who's testifying?
Rephrase your question.
Did you have occasion to see her when she came home after her soirees out the hook?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase that question.
Did you have an opportunity to see her after she would go off for some period of time and then come back home?
yes,
And you knew that when she was going back home, she was doing what, ma'am?
Objection, leading, Your Honor.
That's not
Take the
legal.
rule as to that question.
May we have the running objection to leading question? Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
They're noted.
Did you know what Ms. Wuornos' purpose was when she was leaving your home to go out on the highway, what she intended to do?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Answer it if you can.
yes,
But you didn't know she intended to kill Richard Mallory on December the 1st, 1989, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection.
May we have curative instruction now?
Disregard the last question, no answer.
Now, Mr. Miller suggested to you that Ms. Wuornos got moody when she drank. That's not all she got when she drank, was it?
Objection, leading, Your Honor.
That's no rule.
Isn't that true?
no, she was definitely a different person.
In what way was she a different person when she drank as opposed to when she wasn't drinking?
She was very sweet when she was sober, but when she was drinking, she was more outgoing and liked to talk abusive to me more. I mean, it seems like it's when we fought more was when she was drinking.
Did you ever see her when she was drinking become aggressive towards another person?
No,
Did you ever see her get in a fight in a bar?
Objection, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Have you and Ms. Wuornos ever been in a bar out drinking together?
Objection.
When, after she was drinking, she got into physical fights with other individuals?
Objection, Your Honor, to sustain.
Overruled. Answer it if you can, ma'am.
no, I don't ever remember seeing her fight with anybody, no.
Now, the telephone calls that Mr. Miller referred to, you were scared, weren't you?
Yes, I was,
But you hadn't done anything wrong.
correct.
And you wanted to make sure that the police knew that you had not been involved in the shooting of Richard Mallory.
Objection, leading, Your Honor.
Rephrase your question.
What did you want the police to know about what you knew about Richard Mallory's shooting?
I wanted them to know that I had nothing to do with it.
What did you want them to know about who did it?
I definitely wanted them to know who did it, that it wasn't me.
Did you try during those telephone calls to get the defendant to tell the truth to the police?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection.
When you were speaking with the defendant, who was doing most of the talking during those telephone calls?
She was.
And isn't it true that the defendant constantly asked you to lie for her?
Objection, Your Honor. Assuming in fact not in evidence.
At this stage, we'll sustain the objection now. Go ahead, though.
Can you tell this jury how many times it was that Aileen Wuornos, over the 3-day period that she telephoned you at the hotel, asked you to lie for her?
Objection, Your Honor. Just ruled on that.
If she can answer the question, go ahead.
It was quite a few times.
What, if anything, did you respond to her over and over again when she asked you to lie for her?
That I would not lie for her.
And when she told her that you wouldn't lie for her, did she tell you that it was mistaken identity, that the police had the wrong woman?
Yes, she did.
Did she ever suggest to you during any of those 3 days of telephone calls to your hotel that she had been raped or harmed in any way by Richard Mallory?
No, she didn't.
Did she ever suggest anything other than she wanted you to lie for her and that it was mistaken identity? That Richard Malley had done anything to provoke an attack by her on him?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Did she, ma'am?
No.
And it isn't a fact that in any conversation you had with Detective Munster, he let it be known to you that if there was any type of deal, that he and nobody in law enforcement could ever get one red
Objection, Your
cent?
Honor.
This is redirect, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Isn't that true that he told you that they couldn't get one red cent?
Yes, I believe he said that.
And isn't it true that you told him you wanted nothing to do with the movie deal? That you didn't think it was right for anybody to get a penny?
At a point in time, yes, I did.
Have you ever taken 1 cent from anyone involving a movie deal or the knowledge you have of this case or the story or your life with Aileen Wuornos since the first day that you met with police officers and told them that she had told you about shooting Richard Malley?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever went out and sought people for money?
No, I haven't.
You've had plenty of opportunities, though, haven't you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Can't be objected.
Isn't it true that you wanted to be left alone and just be able to live your life and put this
Objection, Your
behind
Honor.
you?
There's a witness on the stand, not at the podium.
So then the defendant wrote to you and offered to pay you money, didn't she?
Yes.
And she wanted to be involved in a movie deal to sell her story,
Objection,
didn't she?
Your
Isn't
Honor.
that what she told you in her letter?
Yes, it is.
The last, sustain the objection, but the last question he asked, the answer came to.
When you ask them all together,
Right, all right.
So when you told Aileen Wuornos that you wouldn't lie for her, she then tried to come up with it was a mistake.
Correct.
Thank you very much. All a big mistake. Isn't that what she told you? It was all a mistake, a case of mistaken
Your Honor,
identity.
I object to constant
I didn't
leading.
ask questions without the.
What did she tell you about what it was when she was talking about a mistake?
She said it was a mistaken identity, that they had the wrong person.
Did she tell you what she would do to the authorities if they couldn't come up with some evidence to tie her into it?
I believe she put it that she would have a big lawsuit on him.
Yes. Lawsuit happy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Objection, Your Honor.
Just
Mrs.
try
Sprite asks for curious.
Sustain the objection, this is the last comment I counsel. You may inquire, sir.
You had just testified, Ms. Moore, that the discussions about the book and movie deals that you had with Mr. Munster were that you wouldn't get 1 red cent or that no one would get 1 red cent. Isn't that what you just testified to?
Objection, Your Honor, that's not what she testified to. She
They're
testified
going to
to
what they want to do.
objection, Judge.
Overruled. Go ahead.
In fact, the discussion was that only a portion of it would go to someone else. Isn't that true?
I really don't. I know that he said that they wouldn't get any money out of it.
Mr. Munster told you that.
Correct.
Okay, but he asked you if you wanted to give a portion of it, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall having a conversation with Rosie and Sanji wherein you said to her, you know what I could do with $50,000? You recall saying that?
No, I don't.
And in fact, if Ms. Giannassani says that you did say that, she would not be
Objection, Your Honor,
able to
full properly.
say
In
that.
the objection.
Regarding the statements on the phone, in fact, Lee Wuornos did tell you several times that she acted in self-defense, did she not?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No questions, Your Honor. May this witness be excused.
Yes, sir. I believe that you will make her available for defense if the event is
We
necessary.
will, we'd ask, Your Honor, that she remain in town for a few days, and she may be reached through the State Attorney's Office at counsel's convenience. Thank you.
Stand down, ma'am.
Thank you.
Pardon me, please.